Welcome to the Timescales Interviews. I'm Grego, your host. This interview is being conducted and recorded in the United States and the United Kingdom. Today we have a very special guest, the extraordinary Doctor Who artist, Colin Howard. How are you today, Colin?
I'm good, thank you, man. Nice to meet you, Greg.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. You look great, and I love the collection behind you. And we're definitely gonna have to get into that. Am I correct that you are currently located in England?
Yeah, we're in Norwich, Norfolk, sort of around where a lot of the US World War II air bases were. And Mildenhall is not that far away, which is kind of the remaining major US base over in this country. So it's the supply and freight airport for the US into Europe.
That's interesting. I actually, being an American, obviously, I did not know that there was a base there. And
yeah, there's only really that and Lakenheath, which is kind of the fighter wing for strike aircraft as well. But there used to be loads scattered around East Anglia because obviously it was very close to Europe. So we had lots of air bases and air shows that we used to go to in my youth. Some plane nuts as well as F1 and Doctor Who. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone, Colin has a brand new book that was actually released by Candy Jar, I think yesterday. I've been reloading the Candy Jar website page for Timeslides every day, like for the last year or so. And yesterday it was updated and it said that it had been posted. And it's called the Timeslides, the Doctor Who artwork of Colin Howard, and the ones that have been posted by Candy Jar are paperbacks, but you can also get a hardback, and that's the one that I ordered. And it's my understanding that those are about to be delivered to Candy Jar soon, and then they will be posted as well. So it has been released in one format. The next one is coming, and it's Andy, Andy and I yesterday were talking about artwork, and he holds you in high regards, as do I. And
oh, bless you, man.
I just how exciting is this for you?
This is pretty big. I mean, I've never had a chat with anyone in the US other than my brother-in-law, really, over Zoom.
Really?
The pandemic, as everybody did. So it's amazing. I'd hoped over the years I might have wangled a convention invite, but never happened. So yeah, I'm afraid I've only visited your amazing country on a couple of times on holidays. New York and then the Florida Keys. We did a bit of a drive down there, which was beautiful. So many osprey down there. Bit of just as well. So I like
and alligators.
yeah, lots of those. Hopefully not in pool.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the publisher's synopsis of your brand new book. It says that Colin Howard's art graced the covers of around 30 VHS releases, and for the first time ever, they are collected in Timeslides, the Doctor Who art of Colin Howard. Join Colin as he opens his personal archive and takes you on a tour of his Doctor Who universe. From iconic videos to book covers, from illustrations to private commissions, featuring original sketches, unpublished designs, and a fascinating commentary, Timeslides takes you further behind the scenes than ever before. And there's more. That's not the whole synopsis yet.
Jeez,
Next,
huh?
yeah, it's a pretty long one.
Hmm.
Colin discusses the lack of reference material in a pre-internet world,
Mhm.
achieving the high level of detail everyone expects from his stunning pieces, his ongoing battles with multiple sclerosis, which you and I
Mhm.
just talked about a little bit, meeting his definitive Doctor Who companion and making her a promise, and much more. And
Oh
it
yeah.
goes on. There's even more. Colin's work has been featured in the Target novelization range, on the covers of Doctor Who classic comics, and the past Doctor and Eighth Doctor adventure novels, in Doctor Who magazine, and
Mhm.
even in recent DVD and Blu-ray animations like The Evil of the Daleks. Okay, so
Mm.
um, I want this book like yesterday. I wish I already had it. I want this. And it's my understanding that Candy Jar is going to ship it soon, and there's nothing like having something coming in the mail to look forward to. Um, so
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I haven't had my copy yet.
oh my goodness. Okay, so how do you feel about the publisher's synopsis there?
That's a lot to live up to, Anton. I was assigned a writer by Sean, the boss at Candy Jar. Thank you, Sean, for still being interested in my work and produced a few covers as well. But a lovely guy called Philip Bates, who I did a few of these kind of chats with, but just over audio. Um, and he took me back and through my very long, boring career, as an artist, right from the very early days up to current, really, and all that is kind of condensed down and hopefully interesting, relevant sections transcribed and popped into Timeslides. So he wanted the approach that the book was more like going into a gallery with somebody and being shown around and having the person sort of give information relating to each piece. So that was the approach that we took, and we he compiled a big list of stuff, and I whittled it down a bit, and we settled on this amount of my paintings to pop into to Timeslides. So that's how we arrived at that. But bless him, he's very good on the
And you're talking about Sean at Candy Jar?
yeah, Sean, and the writer is Philip Bates.
Philip
Um,
Bates.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's got a book with Candy Jar, 100 Objects of Who. Um,
Okay.
so I
I
read some of his book and thought, yeah, this guy's good. And we had a few chats and we got on. So I thought, fantastic. He can handle the transcribing of my nonsense.
okay.
Um,
Yeah,
quite a job, quite a mountain to climb.
I've actually bumped into him as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it was on Twitter. Um, I had
Uh-huh.
uh, I had posted that I like the 100 objects of Doctor Who. That's really good. And I'd
Yeah.
posted something about that or liked it or something, and he liked what I said or whatever. So I
Uh,
bumped shoulders with him on social media. So we're going to get deep into this book here, and I am so excited to be talking to you. It's almost it's
this isn't
surreal.
the book. This
Oh,
is
no,
kind of
no, no, you have one.
well, this
What?
is a prototype.
It's a
But
prototype?
yeah, because they sent
Oh,
me the proofs of all the pages, and I took it to my local printer that does my art prints, and they spiral bound it for me and covered it. So yeah, I've got a version of my.
oh, oh, yeah. Okay. Wow, that is awesome. Our hardcover, when it arrives, it's going to, after being read, probably to the point that the binding is wearing out, we are going to put it on our family bookshelf, and it's always going to be there. So, Colin, uh, can you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Okay, well, my name obviously Colin Howard, and I'm from a very small market town in the UK called Harleston, and it was a really quiet little place. There wasn't much happening, um, and so as a kid, I used to love watching like the Sinbad movies and things like
Mm.
that as a child in the like the 70s and stuff like that, and that kind of stuff fired my imagination. We'd always kind of watched Doctor Who, but I started to get more and more into it, mostly because of the monsters, if I'm honest. Uh, I love the fantasy aspect of things and shows like that. And yeah, I absolutely love having a new sort of creature to ogle every sort of month when the story finished. Another one would be lined up in the next. And I used to try and draw them at home and stuff. And then when Doctor Who Weekly first came out in the UK, I was kind of an age and started to buy that. And I collected a few other bits and pieces over the years. There were some serial figures, cardboard stand-up ones that I collect as well. And yeah, Doctor Who just had that special something about it. It just caught my imagination, and I absolutely adored it. Um, yeah, I just kind of decided because as a youngster in a very small town with nothing much happening, I used to try and escape into books as well. And the Doctor Who books in particular, because it was linked to the show. And it was never repeated back then. There were no iPlayers or, you couldn't stream it online or anything like that.
Right.
And it was before VHS recorders even. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a case of the only way you could get your fantasy fix was to read it. So I started collecting the books. And that's when I was first really exposed to Christos Achilleos' artwork. Who, we got his monster book. In fact, we bought
I'm
four.
sorry. You said Chris Achilleos?
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Okay.
or Achilleos. I do apologize if the pronunciation's wrong, Chris. I know, bless you, mate. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, there were four of us kids, and we all got a copy of this because we just adored the show back then. And yeah, I just devoured everything Doctor Who that I could get hold of. And it seemed to stay with me more than the rest of my family as we got
Yeah.
older. I would still carry on watching it religiously, but everyone else kind of drifted away. So I've still got my monster book from back then with my name written on it in case anybody got hold of it and I could go, that's fine.
It's
So yeah, it's essentially all his fault.
it's Chris
Yeah,
Chris Achilles's
sorry,
fault.
Chris. Sorry, mate. I do love you. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
I
Um,
I didn't see the link until you mentioned that when we were
mm,
talking before we started the interview. I did not know. And it would make sense. I mean, it definitely would make sense that you were a aficionado
yeah,
of his talent.
yeah. I was a very impressionable, artistic youngster, and to see these amazing illustrations and paintings, they just used to out, and
Hmm.
you'd sort of look along a bookshelf, and there was another one, and oh man, I've got to get that. And I used to beg my parents to get me the next book when it would come out if we were on a day trip up to the coast or to Norwich, which is where I live now, which was our nearest city. And I used to just sit and read these books, and there used to be little illustrations in them when they first started out. And so I used to start to try and copy those. And then I mentioned these Weetabix stand-up figures as well.
Hmm.
And I used to copy those as well. And then when Doctor Who magazine first started as Doctor Who Weekly, it used to have comic strips, which still does. But I would
Yeah,
often
yeah, occasionally.
try and
They
copy these as well, and try and refine my art techniques. And so even there, Doctor Who was quite instrumental with me. And I don't know if you remember the episode Blink, the David Tennant story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I
Yeah,
probably had nightmares about that for several months.
yeah,
That's that's one of the actual true horror.
yeah.
That's where Doctor Who achieved true
Mm.
horror
Yeah,
again, right there.
it's the best new idea for a creature in Doctor Who for years,
Hmm.
and I think it still stands up as that. But all I meant about it was I drew when we were going to decorate our bedroom because I used to have to share a room with my brother. I drew one of the Ogrons on the wall, in the tip, and coloured him in, and there he was. So then we ended up having that room wallpapered. So that's where the Blink connection comes in.
Okay.
The future takes wallpaper paper off my old bedroom. There's going to be a Weetabix drawn ogron about sort of this. Uh, so that's where the Sally Sparrow Blink, thing.
Right.
So yeah.
So, what drives you and what motivates you? Do you have hobbies? What and I know that a lot of people would consider Doctor Who to be a hobby, and I don't really know how to describe that. The
Mm,
best description of being a Doctor Who fan, and I don't like to use the word fan very much because
mm,
technically fan is short for a fanatic. And
mm.
and fanatic does not really have the most positive connotation to it.
Not
But
really.
yeah. But what drives you? What motivates you? What do you think of when you get up in the morning that, hey, I can't wait to go do this today?
Oh man. Well, I mentioned earlier, I think that I was a bit of an ornithologist as well. So
Hmm.
that was something that as a family we always used to go and do. And living in the countryside, there were lots of birds around, and I used to love looking at them and the design of them and other animals as well. And so that's where kind of my interest in natural history kicked off as well. And basically, I used to love to draw these things because it was something I could do. And I would kind of like try and draw dogs and people's pets and things like that when I was a little kid, And then I just kept doing it and kept doing it, all the time, still watching Doctor Who and thinking maybe I could do that when I grow up,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
be another Christos Achilles. And that was kind of my main driving ambition. And it was to constantly look at my work and think, what could I do better there? What have I done wrong? How can I improve things? And I'd start to collect art books of other artists as well and study their techniques and what they would do and try and learn from that and try and incorporate their ideas and techniques with how to use paint and learn to do that and try and find my own style with artwork. And it was just something that I just felt I couldn't not do. I've always drawn, um, especially as a kid, and then more so when I was unemployed after leaving school. I worked in a record store for a while and really enjoyed that, but
A
it didn't.
record store, as in actual real vinyl.
Yep, yep, yep,
Oh,
yep.
awesome.
It
Yeah.
was. I was working in it's a chain called HMV that's still going in the UK.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was the year that Fleetwood Mac released Tango in the Night. And
Okay.
there was an issue with the pressing, the first pressings, they all jumped. So there used to be these queues of people with their bags with an LP in. And I'd start to go, hang on, don't tell me you've got Fleetwood Mac and it skips, yeah? You want to change it? Thought you did. So it would cut out their awkward, how am I going to handle this thing? So, yeah.
Right.
I love the interaction with people because it made such a change. Being from a small town and not really seeing too many other people. An artist, it's a very isolated life. You spend most of your time on your own. And so looking out the window and seeing birds and animals is a lovely distraction, and to watch them and how they behave. And that was why I sort of got into that and wanted to draw them as well. Um, Basically, if I just do this for up there,
Oh, a cheetah. There we
yeah,
go.
yeah, there
Yep.
you go. That
Which,
features quite a bit in later life and Timeslides as well.
yeah.
It was a bit of a life-changing moment in about 2010. So that was quite amazing. We went and worked on a cheetah conservation project for a few
Now,
weeks.
you and your wife, and you're talking in 2010 in
Yeah.
South Africa.
Yep. Just
Yeah.
after the World Cup had happened, it was a couple of months after that.
Uh-huh.
And there's still a lot of bars around in South Africa. And it was the most amazing experience I think we'd ever shared together um, to work in this conservation project with the big cats. We'd get up really early in the morning, about like 4 o'clock, and go out on a hike with the cats because these guys were orphaned and hand reared,
Hmm.
and they would actually come up to you purring and want to be rubbed and roll around.
You know, that's uh I I can only imagine petting a cheetah. Our family has loved cats. We have always had a cat. I don't
Mm.
remember the time that we did not, well, actually I do remember the time we did not have one. That's when my cat Homie died at the age of 20. And I think there was only one day that went by before my wife adopted another cat. It was, but
Yeah,
we've always had them. But with the big ones like that, you say they're purring. I
yeah,
mean, isn't there some level of fear there in dealing with them? Because a cheetah can kill a person really
yeah.
fast.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
these guys were so well trained. Um, say we'd go out on walks with them to get them to hunt,
mhm,
and we'd have to try and keep an eye on the cheetah to find where it had gone, because this is in like the South African savannah and mostly sort of quite arid, rocky plains. I'd guess a
mhm.
bit kind of Nevada-ish, that kind of area for you guys. And
Yep. Yeah,
trying to
Arizona.
spot a big cat at speed like a cheetah amongst rocks, it's amazing how their camouflage works. And you just lose track of them. And we'd have to try and follow them to see where they would bring down whatever kill. And if they did, we'd have to get up to it pretty quickly and then try and get it away from the cats. Because if they sat, they'd gorge.
Okay,
Um,
wait a
then they
second.
wouldn't
That
for about three
that
hours.
sounds extremely dangerous. To
That's
take
it.
away a kill from a cheetah?
Yeah.
How? What? Seriously?
Yep, seriously.
Oh,
The ranger with us was really good, and he'd step in first, and then I'd go and assist and try and help move the kill away. And then, bless me, I'm not exactly tall. I'm about like 5'8", something like that, 5'9" maybe.
mhm.
And yeah, we'd have to then carry the kills back to base over our shoulders. So I had like springbok, like an antelope over my shoulder. Um,
And
And
where are the cheetahs at this point?
they're then following you, waiting for a chance to get hold of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, then you get them back to base, and then you'd have to have another one of your team go and grab like a dissected leg from the cold room, throw that for them, and so they then sit and gorge on that rather than the fresh kill. That
Right.
then later have to help dissect and then freeze for when they didn't actually succeed in the hunt, which was quite often. They'd poor guys. I mean, they'd really run their hearts out, and I guess about 1 in 5 times they'd actually bring something down, and it's such an effort for them, and it just kills them for energy. Um, to get up to those speeds, I think they hit about 60 miles an hour a cheetah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, they're pretty damn athletic. So
Well,
yeah, so
there's
it's an
in
amazing experience. I mean, the ones that we did that with, I say, were hand reared, so they were pretty tame. But there were some wild ones as well that were brought in for breeding purposes, and we'd have to go into their enclosures to clean up the feces and to take away the bits of carcass that they wouldn't eat, and then give them to the hyena in their pen. Um, and always you'd have to keep an eye out on where they were. So I
oh
mean,
yeah, of
had
course.
a had a big male sort of hissing and thumping the ground with their paws in front of me, which is kind of like a getaway so and so thing.
Yeah, I guess you definitely would have to keep an eye on where they are because they definitely know where you were. Uh,
Oh yeah,
I cannot imagine even being in the presence of a big cat like that
mm,
because you know they that being a wild animal there's unpredictability there
yeah.
and they may be purring 1 minute and have their fang in your jugular the next. I I I can't imagine working with them like that. That's that you and your wife how long were you doing that?
We were only there for about 3.5 weeks,
Mhm.
uh, but it wasn't as long as we'd have loved. And when it came to leave, we were both absolutely in floods of tears because it was such a life changing thing to do. And it was so rewarding, despite the danger element of things. I mean, you had to sign a waiver to say, you knowingly realize that accidents happen, blah, blah, blah.
Right, right, I can imagine.
So yeah, that was all a bit freaky. And I had a
Yeah.
mere investigate my mouth with his little claws and the teeth. Um,
Really?
yeah, because there was a tame one around the house where we stayed called Milo, and he was an adorable little thing, a bit whiffy, um, but he would think he's part of our group and would follow us to a certain point where he felt safe, and then would wait in the rocks until we came back, and then want some attention. But it was a lovely little fella. I did try and get a kid's book about him going, but
Mhm.
my writing skills weren't quite up to it. But I did a few illustrations for it.
Milo the cheetah. Yeah, and
Milo the meerkat. Yeah.
yeah, really. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, that is really interesting. And it
Bit unusual for a Doctor Who chat.
it is, yes, it is. But I'm not really surprised to find the depth of something that a fellow Doctor Who
Mm.
lover would become involved in because um I tend to think that we are creative people, we're intelligent, we're kind,
Mm.
we are into things. You know what what this reminds me of? There is an author named Will Hadcroft, one of the
Mm.
first people I ever interviewed. He just had a story published called The Resurrection Plant, which is a new audio adventure in the BBC Audio Originals series. And we were discussing what links Doctor Who people together, and he called it a gene. He said that we
Mm,
all have a shared gene. And I understand exactly what he meant by that, and that was a good way of putting it. And the it's interesting that Doctor Who fans, they're not just into Doctor Who, but they also get really into something else also.
yeah,
So if you ever I think anyone that you meet like at a convention or something, if you really get to talking to them, you're going to
mm,
find another level there where it's not just Doctor Who, but there's
mm,
at least one other thing that they are really passionate about.
yeah,
And that's
absolutely
interesting
dedicated.
and dedicated. That's
Mm,
interesting. And with you, the big cats,
mm,
uh, that is really that's really awesome. Um, so let's go back to your formative years as a kid.
mm.
Did you happen to come from a family of artists?
You'd think that that might be the case. I think I had one uncle that used to dabble a bit with oils, but not to a great extent. And I mean, in the rest of my family, my sister Donna is still gifted with pencil. I mean, she even at one stage started to do some portraits with her typewriter, where she'd use the keys to different extents to create light and shade. And she was quite into her rock music. Again, that was kind of my bad, infecting them with bands like and stuff like that back in the 80s. And yeah, so she would do some pretty amazing work with just a keyboard on a piece of paper. And then she found a great ability with material, and she's a very, very good seamstress. She does wedding dresses for people and stuff like that. And so she's like carving out a nice career for herself in Halston now with that. But that's the only other kind of artistic gene of anybody in our family, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, and but with your sister
Mm,
Donna, it is in the family. So
mm,
there's a little bit of a pattern there. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It'll be
when
that gene again, mate.
yeah, yeah. So when did you decide that art was going to be a career choice? And when did you decide to go professional, so to speak?
Well, it was, as I say, there was not a lot going on in Halston. It was a really sleepy little town. Um, and I
Sounds
just,
relaxing. That sounds
yeah,
relaxing, actually.
yeah, yeah. And then at a certain point, you get a bit bored with relaxing when it's every day, all day. And
Okay.
you've got like a fertile imagination and ideas rattling around in your head.
Yeah.
That's where I would start to sort of get my artistic leanings out. I mean, an uncle gave me a Spider-Man comic with the Beetle, and I thought, oh, that's really good. And then I started to buy Marvel comics and Goblin. And it was the night when Stacy died, when the Goblin kills Stacy. That was just such a big, deep, emotional thing to read. And
Your audio dropped out there for just a second. Can you go back to the goblin there and repeat that
oh
again?
yeah,
Tell me.
sorry. And it was when the Goblin uh, killed Gwen Stacy. He knocked her from I think the top of one of the bridges in New York, and
Uh,
in front of Spider-Man. And it was just such a big emotional event. Something in me kind of fired, and I connected with that. And I used to try and draw the comic strips as well, which with a bit of practice, and persistence, you kind of keep learning and doing things and improving. And I did to an extent. Um, and I was starting to think, how on earth can I make a bit of a living out of this? Because I thought there's nothing else really I want to do. I mean, my dad was a builder, and I originally thought I was going to go and work with him.
You
Um,
said that I'm sorry, you said that your dad was what?
a builder. He was a
A
self-employed
builder.
builder. Yeah.
Hmm.
And quite amazing actually, because at one point he left that profession to try something else and
Hmm.
worked as a printing press in Bungay, which is near Harleston, and he ended up crushing his hand in the bookbinding press, and had to
Wow.
be taken to hospital with a bag of his own self to have
Mhm.
reconstructive surgery. And his hand, he's like this kind of thing. You can
Mhm.
see that. Sorry, my MS shake a bit now and again. Um, three of his knuckles are now on the inside of his hand rather than the outside. And obviously, that kind of was a bit of a dangerous thing for a self employed guy. But he practiced and persisted and ended up going back to being a builder, a carpenter, and a decorator, and a very
Okay.
hideous one, too. Um, so I used to go and work with him on site and swing sledgehammers and pickaxes and stuff like that. And sort of absorb his knowledge and information. So it made me very good at DIY around the home,
Okay.
which was useful in later life.
Yeah. You you, I think you almost covered our next question here. But you know, you just mentioned something. You said the MS, and
Mm.
what you mean by that is, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, multiple sclerosis,
Yeah, that's the one.
which, yeah, which unfortunately you do have.
Yeah, that was diagnosed in about 2010 after I had MRI scan, and they found damage in my brain and in my neck, my central nervous system. And this is where this disease attacks you. You're basically attacking yourself on a cellular level, and it picks away at the coating on your nerves called myelin. And this rogue cells basically that normally help you get over illnesses um, that decide to then target the myelin on your nerves. And yeah, so
Okay.
that in a
So,
long, gradual process. Most guys get relapsing remitting MS, where they'll have an attack and then recover back to almost how they were. Mine is progressive. It's now primary progressive MS, which is a long, slow slope downward. And
okay.
I'm still doing okay. Um,
Okay. Well, I mean, you look
to a
great.
point.
I mean, I if you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. And so, how does somebody get it? Obviously, you can't contract it from another person, and it's not caused by a physical injury. Ha- How? I mean, why? I don't understand. I had a
Yeah,
friend that had it, like I was discussing with you
mm,
before we started the interview, but I it's how does somebody get MS?
yeah, it's a very strange thing. I mean, there's no definitive reasoning at the moment. I think there was some American research that discovered this. I think it's called Epstein-Barr virus, and it's something you can contract that a lot of people with MS at some point had glandular fever, and it can kind of cause that.
Hmm.
Um, and it's something you can get. I mean, I think somebody I knew had glandular fever, and I was like a young guy in my early 20s, and we were out one night, and he said, "Oh, this pint doesn't quite taste right." I mean, come on, it was UK bitter, and none of it really tasted that great. Um, I was more a kind of a Czech lager kind of drinker myself. So he said, could you taste it and check? And I didn't know he'd um, then got um, glandular fever, and he didn't because it hadn't come out yet at that point. And so I think I contracted it from tasting his beer for him.
Wow.
So I think
Wow.
that's kind of how I got it, because then I came down with glandular fever, and then it wasn't until about sort of 10 years later that the MS started to show up. And that seems to be the most common link with how they think people might contract MS. But there's no definitive, this is it reason.
Yeah. Okay. Um, going, I want to touch on your past a little bit more, and then we're going to get into your new book. And because I want people to go order it. I have a prediction about what's going to happen with your book. And yeah, it's not financial advice. I'm not an advisor or anything like that, but I think that I'm pretty sure I already know what's going to happen with your book, and that's going to be a fun discussion here coming up pretty quick. But has in your past, has anyone ever told you that you were a genius or of superior talent? I got a good smile out of you right there.
Oh dear.
And I hope that the word genius means the same thing in the US and the UK, because I
Yeah.
was interviewing somebody yesterday, and somebody who actually really is a genius in music. And it almost seemed as if he was embarrassed to be referred to as such. So I hope that there's not some US, UK difference with that word, because there are a lot of differences in our language. And people would look at us and go, yeah, Americans and British people speak the same language. So it must be the same, but it's not. So I'm not trying to refer to you as a genius in a manner that may embarrass you, but you obviously are if someone looks at your work. It's undeniable. So maybe the word
It's
brilliant. Maybe the here, hang on. I've got
hey,
my own monster running around here. Here, hop over here,
yeah.
Ida.
That's
Maybe the
cool.
word brilliant. The word brilliant might be better. Has anybody ever told
Yeah.
you you were a genius and or brilliant?
It's one of those very strange things because I have real trouble accepting um, really high praise. Um,
Really?
yeah, I just kind of don't feel worthy um, of of this kind of thing. It's weird. I mean, it's something that's kind of popped up a bit more recently um, with the prominence of the VHS covers coming back again. That they seem to now be the current target book covers that Doctor Who originally had. And I guess the generation that grew up in the 80s loving Doctor Who and collected the videos are now sort of going, well, hang on, I remember these pieces of art.
Mm-hmm.
And these were amazing, you know, or whatever. Obviously, other people's, not mine. There's been a few of us that
Right.
have um, but no, I find it a little bit tricky to sort of accept the genius thing. I mean, it's been thrown at me a few times by some people, which is
Ah,
absolutely fantastic
so
of them.
it
Um,
has.
mm,
Yeah.
um, one of whom was my second author, editor, sorry, at Doctor Who magazine, um, Gary Russell. He used to call me a genius. Um,
Gary Russell. It seems like
yeah,
I've heard that name before.
yeah. He's kind of had a lot to do with Big Finish, and he's now on I think doing or was doing the animations. He was kind of leading the other team that was producing them. I was on a separate team in the UK,
Mhm.
but he did a few times. I think JNT once called me a genius. Um,
Oh, no way. Wait a second. All right. John Nathan Turner called you, Colin Howard, a genius.
yeah, there you go. But
That's
it was a bit strange. I mean,
I
I would sort of like go around the conventions with my artwork, trying to sort of get my name up there and my work a bit more prominence. And
Mhm.
I was with Michelle at the time. We got together when there was the hurricane in the UK. It was oh God, it was the 80s. So it was about sort of 1986, something like that.
Hmm.
And she made an impression with him. Well, she does with most people, to be fair, um, especially me. And
Yeah.
I think that kind of helped. And I think he saw some of my work, and yeah,
Wow,
just
that is
Michelle and me.
so okay. And Michelle is welcome to pop in if if she wants to say hi. But so the answer to that is yes. And one of the people that referred to you as a genius was John Nathan Turner. That's very interesting, Colin. Okay.
That
Um,
was a weird one. That was a memory from a convention, say back in the mid 80s. I mean, I hadn't really done anything much at that point. I was
right, right.
quite illustrating stuff. I would do like really fine dot black and white illustrations,
Oh, beautiful.
like this.
Oh my God, man.
And that one
Wow.
was used in Doctor Who magazine. So
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, I've got a portfolio full of them.
Okay. They
Taking those around.
let me ask you one more question here, and this is about the trying to find out um a how you fit into a common pattern with other artists, creators, and professionals. Um, what I'm wondering is, first of all, your name has gone down in Doctor Who history forever, and you're one of the most famous artists. I don't see. I believe that uh, every Doctor Who fan or lover today, because of the internet, has seen your work, whether they know it or not. And if they if they make it this far into the interview with you and I, they're going to go look now. They're going to go get on Google. And but what I'm wondering is, has success to you ever come like a Midas touch, where just everything that you do turns to gold, or was there a downside? And the reason that I ask is that other artists, actors, and authors in particular have told me that they've experienced something which is called rejection, such as where you propose something. I see you're laughing here. So uh, you propose something, and you may feel with all of your heart that it's the best thing ever, only to be told no, or just flat out ignored. So, have you dealt with rejection in your career, and how did you deal with it?
Uh, just sheer persistence, I think, is the answer to that. Um, I guess because when I first started out, I would do those black and white pixel illustrations and things in fanzines. And then later in Doctor Who magazine, after John Freeman, the editor, then gave me a break. And I think my first job for Doctor Who magazine was an archive full-page comic strip for The Mask of Mandragora, and
Yep.
that was good fun to do. And I followed that up with the Terror of the Autons one, and then I thought, well, this is going to be a regular gig. But then I think budgetary reasons curtailed that. But he then started to ask me to do the archive illustrations for Doctor Who magazine as well. And so I do lots of these sort of really fine dot work illustrations, like I showed you earlier.
Hmm.
To just accompany the review of the stories, because obviously nobody had seen these since broadcast, and it was the only way people would learn about what happened in these stories. So I did that for a few years. Then he started to let me do covers, and that was the thing I'd always wanted to do. And I was
Hmm.
submitting artwork all the time, and sometimes getting a nice letter back saying, "Oh, yeah, good, but no thanks, keep trying." And you just go, right, you dig your heels in a bit and go, look, I think I'm
Okay.
ready to do this job. And you just try and carry on and
Okay.
keep submitting, keep learning, and keep trying to improve. And that's the only secret, I guess, I could say that I used. It was just sheer persistence. And then showing my work around. I mean, that portfolio. We went to see Colin Baker in a play in Norwich when he was in a show called Corpse. And we met him after the show. And we presented in our local Doctor Who group. We'd done a charity thing and raised money for Cot Death when he was a patron of that. So I showed Colin my work, and he was lovely about it, really quite like what I did, to the extent that he wrote a reference letter for me.
Oh,
And
really?
so to then start writing to the BBC and go, look, I'd love to do your video covers. I've worked for Doctor Who magazine. Here's a letter from the Doctor saying this guy's got something, maybe give it a go. And so God bless you, Colin Baker, for doing that for me. Lovely.
I would love to talk to him someday. That's high on my list of goals right there. I want to interview Colin Baker.
He's such a lovely, warm guy.
That is exactly
And
what I've heard.
really a
Um,
good listener. And yeah, he's good fun. And so that helped, I think, with the BBC.
that letter from him.
Yeah, and they were in the process then of changing artists again. I mean, they had been using Andrew Skilleter, who was another guy that took over after my art idol Christos left and went elsewhere. Um, and then Andrew was the main artist for quite some time and doing some lovely stuff. I've still got a lot of his prints from back in the 80s. And
Mhm.
then another guy came and took over, and he was kind of doing everything at that time. It was very difficult to get a foot in the door anywhere because Alistair was doing loads and loads of work, Alistair Pearson. And then for some reason, the BBC decided they wanted to change and were looking for someone else to take over. And that's when I got my call up to bring my work up to the BBC, go into Wood Lane and have an interview with the lady that ran the range, Sarah Andrews. And there and then she looked at my portfolio and offered me a choice between the two doctors or Resurrection of the Daleks, the Peter Davison story.
Mhm.
And as a kid, one of the aliens I absolutely loved were the Sontarans, and I could do them
Yeah.
with both hands. And I made myself a Sontaran costume with full papier-mâché, and I made another friend a full ice warrior from fiberglass and chicken wire. Um,
Fiberglass and chicken wire.
Yep, and then putting copy decks over old trousers and stuff, and mashed up cotton wool to make the molded scales and things like that. It was another creative bent coming out in me,
Mhm.
and yeah. Sorry, you'll have to remind me. It's gone off on a
We,
weird.
well, you know, we were talking about how you've dealt with rejection in the past,
Ah,
and you have experienced it, but you turned it into a really positive, interesting story there. So let's I keep thinking about the paper mache and chicken wire, and it immediately makes me think of a convention. So okay, let's go back to 2016, and you did the cover of the Doctor Who animated reconstruction of the Power of the Daleks, and the credits also show Mike Collins. Now, the Power of the Daleks is one where, unfortunately, it appears as if the BBC really did lose the damn thing, And I don't think we're ever going to get to see the original footage because apparently it doesn't exist anymore. Unless somebody's still got one in a television basement uh in Africa or something like that. I don't think it's going to be found. So that story was recreated in animation, and you did the cover on that?
Yeah, it was quite strange because I'd had to walk away from Doctor Who artwork because when computer art came in, obviously people like me were no longer required. Who needed
Wow.
stick paint portraits? You know, you could just stick a photograph on there and stick a swirl around it, and boom, there you go. No problem
Yeah.
likenesses there. Um, and they wanted the range to have continuity across the books, the videos, everything they were doing. They wanted it all to look the same. Now, people that have contacted me used to say that the thing that they loved was that surprise element of going into the store to look at the videos to see what would come out. And that would often be the first time they saw the artwork. This was an era long before things being leaked online and all this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that was quite amazing to have that. And sorry, I've gone off on another tangent again here. I think it's
Well,
part
it's
of
it,
message. Right?
yeah, well, no, it's all relative. It's I I I understand what you're saying about seeing the covers. Um
Mm,
there's a American rock band that I'm just a little bit familiar with, which is called ZZ Top.
mhm.
And one of the reasons that they
I must
picked the
say, you
name,
are a very smart dressed man.
well, thank you, Colin. Um,
You don't look
the
like you've crawled out of a sleeping bag. You're all right.
oh no, okay, go ahead, keep going. So they one of the reasons that they picked the name they did with the two Z's is so that they were all that their stuff was down at the end of the rack. And when
Mm-hmm.
you went in the store, like here, you were mentioning to me earlier about that store that you worked at, and I finally remembered the name. It was called Record Factory. We had that was our equivalent here. And but anyway, that makes sense. That BBC has been pretty successful at marketing. I think that in almost anyone would agree with that, and for them to want to have a consistent uh an appeal to someone on a store shelf, it would make sense. But I've never really thought about the fact of it obsoleting real talent. And that's sad. There's something that's not
Yeah.
right about that. There's something
Mm.
that does not bode well with that.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
kind of a bit Bon Jovi shot through the heart, you know.
all right. Let's see how long you can keep this up because I can't keep up with you. A shot through the heart.
Yeah, well, who's to blame?
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh
they gave
no.
art a bad name.
Okay. I'm
Hmm?
not going to be
So,
able to turn the radio on for the rest of the day. Thank you.
okay.
I I we have an ongoing joke. My daughters are 6, and
Mm,
I don't know what the deal is with music from the 1980s, but
mm,
it seems to have made a real comeback as if it ever went away. And it seems like every other song we hear on our car stereo, I
mm.
tell them this is from when daddy was in high school. And this
Yeah.
is from when daddy was in high school. And almost to the point where they're tired of hearing it. But now you just tagged a couple of songs here that I'm not going to be able to get that out of my mind, Chris. You are so funny.
Uh,
So you also did backgrounds for other animated reconstructions,
yeah. Yeah.
such as
Sorry,
Shada.
I went off piece a bit again. That's one of the themes. But yeah, I think Charles Norton, the producer of the animation Power of the Daleks, uh, basically remembered me from interviewing me a few years previously for Doctor Who magazine, because I've been consigned into the boot cupboard at the back and forgotten about by most people.
Hmm.
And he remembered me and did this interview with him. And he suddenly thought, actually, what I'd love would be this guy to come back and do a cover for Power of the Daleks, the way he used to do the covers for the VHSs. And I thought, why wouldn't I? When he asked, he was a bit concerned that I wouldn't be interested. But, Doctor Who fan, come on, seriously, a chance to work on something like making a new version of and
Right.
have a name on it again. And so that was pretty amazing. But there were a lot of limitations put on me for that. It took quite a few sketches. I think I did about 6 versions of a potential cover.
Mm-hmm.
And at this stage, the production was kind of cut into 2 halves. There was the marketing side, who I was dealing with, and then the animation side, that was Charles. And they didn't seem to rub together too well. But I think Charles helped influence one of the cover designs that I'd done, and then they agreed to go with that. But the construction was quite massive because I couldn't use photographic likenesses of the actors. It could only be the animated characters that featured that I could portray on the cover, apart from the Daleks. And that's one of the reasons this guy is here.
Apart from the Daleks.
Yeah,
And
he's a model Dalek that I built in the 80s, one of the Seven's Dalek kits. And he's the cover star of Power of the Daleks. I took 3 photos of him.
That's right there. That's him right there. Oh,
that
awesome.
Yeah,
How awesome.
He wanted to check that he got a name check. You know what they're like.
So,
I mean, are you going to say no to a Dalek? Really?
yeah, right. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about your non-Doctor Who works? It's my understanding that you worked on Red Dwarf also.
Yeah, this was kind of around the time where all the artwork jobs were disappearing and going to, and
I'm sorry, you said the jobs were disappearing and going to what?
To Photoshop.
Photoshop.
Photos. Everything was just all starting to look the same.
Man, that's horrible. That's
here's an
it
array of
makes me
photographs.
wonder, what kind of art did we lose and never get to see because of computers? That's something I've never thought of before.
That one, because I got to work on Macra Terror as well. And that was Charles as producer again, and he asked if I'd come back. Because as well as doing the cover for Power of the Daleks, they got to about a weekend before they needed everything finished. And they realized they hadn't commissioned a TARDIS for the materialization in episode 1 and the dematerialization in episode 6. So he gave me some photos of the prop that was used around the time. So I then, over a weekend, in Photoshop, painted by hand, my usual sort of style, but digitally, rather than this just take a photo and chuck a few filters on it kind of thing. But I paint totally from scratch in Photoshop. So I produced one of those for him. And because Power of the Daleks was always meant to just be black and white, it was going to be like a film noir animation, which then for sale in the US, they decided, no, we need a color version. We're not going to accept just the black and white because people won't watch it. And
yeah,
so they then stripped loads of the layers away, that the graduations that had been put on the characters, and did flat color over it. So that's how that came about.
okay.
And then because I could help him out and did it very quickly, I did the TARDIS over like about a day and had it ready for him in the inbox the next morning so they could totally finish the production. So, and it was absolutely awesome to see not just my work on the cover of the DVD, but also to get a mention in the credits of the program I watched as a child.
Yeah.
such a wonderful feeling to see your name with that music.
Yeah, what you just said right there, Colin, that's exactly what this whole interview series is all about. You just nailed it right there. Okay, so well, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Oh no, thank you. But that was the other thing you said about being robbed of covers.
Mm-hmm.
My features in Timeslides as well, this particular piece. But because I'm
Okay.
on the Macra Terror, Charles asked me if I'd come back and help do background work for the animations, which sounds lovely, but it's really mundane.
Okay.
You've got to paint sort of things in relief, like concrete walls and stuff like that, and to just get texture on them. So I started doing that for him for Terror, and then
So
ended.
it was the macro terror, the evil of the Daleks, and Shada.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. And the
yeah.
Shada
So
being the one where it was not
half
completed.
finished because of
Yeah, half
strikes
finished.
at the
Half
BBC.
finished.
Yeah,
Douglas
um,
Adams wrote that. I
yep.
mean, what a terrible disaster. You have Douglas Adams, one of the most creative writing minds in the history of civilized humanity, and then Doctor
Yep.
Who. And that didn't even get completed. How terrible. But so you did the work on those. And then what about Red Dwarf? What is Red Dwarf?
Sorry,
I've
the
seen it.
Babel fish is slipping.
Oh, is it Babelfish? Because I always thought it was Babelfish. See,
Ah,
that there's one of the differences in our languages. Uh,
yeah, I think it's entirely that. I think it sounds better in the US version with
yeah.
Babel.
Oh,
They, I guess, be doing that in your ear because they're decoding whatever language they're hearing for you. Um, but yeah, so basically, sorry, I keep trying to say this one that's in the book as well is a piece that I did to celebrate working on the Macro Terror. I decided to treat it like one of the VHSs that I used to do
mhm.
and to come up with a whole new piece of artwork entirely based around it. Sorry, it's mirroring on the computer.
Yeah, I can see that there, what you're saying, because yesterday I went through and looked at every single VHS cover that you've done since my
Mm.
hardback is not here yet. And yeah, I can see that. And wow, that's beautiful. Hang on a second here. Let me look at this crab. Oh, Colin, unbelievable. And the railroad track at the bottom.
Mhm. With
Wow.
pickaxes as well and discarded tools down there. Uh,
Yeah.
this was basically a piece I did for the love of being involved on it. And
Wow.
I did a mock up VHS cover and took it
Uh-huh.
along to the screening at the BFI and was giving them out to the guys that worked on the show, so they'd have an instant memento because the people that helped make the actual program, we'd have to wait sometimes about 2 months before we actually got our complimentary copies for working
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the only chance we'd get to see it, and I wanted them to come away with something to help remember the occasion. So I did a
Okay.
digital mock-up of one of my VHS cover types and put that over it as well. So it had the look of the old VHSs for them. So that was quite
That's
sweet.
that is absolutely beautiful. That portrait of Patrick Troughton there looks more like Patrick Troughton than Patrick Troughton. That's absolutely gorgeous. Um okay, so you go let's go back in time a little bit here to your very first Doctor Who work. You did the cover for the 1989 Target novelization of Attack of the Cybermen. And
Yep.
when I first asked you about this in a tweet or a text or something, however I started uh talking with you. You made an interesting comment that your hand was shaking, um, and not from MS, but
No,
it was from nervousness, when
yeah.
you were doing the shading and the color for that. And I
Mhm.
don't exactly recall what you said, but I understood what you meant, because I've actually had things that I was working on so intensely that I cared about it so much that my hand would start shaking. And
Yeah.
people, I think that that level of nervousness is something that people can relate to. And the
Mm.
very first thing I thought when you told me that, I thought, man, this guy is a perfectionist. And I think that you never said yes or no. And I did. Are you a perfectionist?
I would love to be, but I'm never fully happy with what I do. So
Really?
I don't think if you can't create perfection in your own mind, then I guess I don't equate that to calling myself a perfectionist. But I guess with the nature of the word, it then employs that I must be, because I'm constantly striving to be the best that I could be. Um,
Exactly.
or that makes me a
Exactly.
perfectionist, I guess.
That's
So I'm hung by my own logic. Damn you!
that is very well put. That's very well put. I am so happy I was able to ask you that. So you did a pencil and ink adaptation of Terror of the Autons for the
Mhm.
inside of Doctor Who magazine number 164, released
Yep.
in the summer of 1990. In fact, I think it was August of 1990. Do you recall that work?
Yep.
You do. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Here.
yeah. I mean, that was my second Doctor Who magazine gig. Again, thank you, John Freeman. And basically, I'd annoyed, I think, the inkers and the colorists at Doctor Who magazine with Mask of Mandragora, or Mandragora, however you want to say it.
I
And
don't know. Here I've heard it called Mandragora.
uh,
But anything that you hear in British English is going to be correct.
uh, but yeah, I basically I used too much black. So it annoyed the colorists because they had very little to work with. I mean, if you look back at the Mask of Mandragora one, it is really quite dark, and
Mhm.
was really quite heavily influenced by Frank Bellamy as well. So I try and do these real contrast looks to my work with
I'm sorry, who is Frank Bellamy?
white. Frank Bellamy was another old British artist from years gone by. He used to do the illustrations in the Radio Times for Doctor Who before they used to pop photographs in. So it was that long ago.
Mhm.
And the first books that I bought as a Doctor Who fan was Time View
Right.
by Bellamy, which has a lot of his lovely black and white work in. And so he heavily influenced my work as well as Christoph's. Um, so, um, so yeah, they're the guys to
And
blame for my black and white style. So
okay.
the Terror of the Autons one, I then had to watch a really ropey old copy, I think from Australia, that I had of Terror of the Autons from our local fan club. These videos would come in and you get to borrow that, copy that.
So you're, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did the same. And are you talking about VHS? What?
Yeah.
Okay, so with you having a PAL format, I don't remember. Is Australia also PAL?
I think it must have been, or somebody was very good at converting NTSC.
Okay, PAL to NTSC conversion. I
Uh,
remember that. Yeah.
but the quality was really dodgy on them, quite bad.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. But
nightmare
yeah.
to
But
freeze
at least,
frame for bits.
yeah, at least we could see them. I guess the PAL to NTSC conversion dates both you and I. All right.
Hey, so I'm ancient, me. Generation,
Okay.
you know.
Right. So just 3 years, or not 3 years, 3 issues later, you did the cover of Doctor Who magazine number 167. That
Mm.
was released in November of 1990, and that's the one that has the beautiful what looks like a painting of the white Daleks. Now,
Yeah.
that was that an actual painting?
Yeah.
Because it's my understanding that Doctor Who magazine was the covers were typically photos, and then you changed everything by doing a cover that appears to be a painting. I mean, that's really remarkable. You changed a
Mm.
trend of Doctor Who magazine, which was
Well,
extremely important back then because we didn't
mm,
even have the internet yet. And then
mm,
you have I mean that's what people were looking forward to. And it was so hard to get here, but you you
mm,
you actually changed the cover format of Doctor Who magazine. Who can
mm.
say that? And you can.
No, I
So
can't say that. Well, it was me, and there were other guys too that did it back then. I mean, there was of course Alistair Pearson and Pete Wallbank, another brilliant artist, and yeah, us guys would come and spoil the fun for just the boring photo montage.
okay. So
Yeah, but
it
that
was
that Dalek cover was about A2 in size, pretty damn big,
really
tall, and I painted it on board. Um,
so
so
that is a painting.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
and again had to kind of scour all the magazines and publications at the time to find pictures of these new design Daleks because they'd radically changed from these boys
Yeah. Yeah.
to this new white and gold version. Um, and then, of course, there was the Gunner Dalek that changed it even further, and Davros in the Emperor shell. So there was a lot of trawling around magazines and things because, I mean, that's one of the things mentioned in Timeslides about in a pre-internet world. You basically, as a Doctor Who fan, had to go and look and buy any magazine or book that you could find that had
Hmm.
photos of Doctor Who in, because odds are you'd never seen them before because.
Yeah. Whoop, yeah, hang on, just a sec. Your audio dropped out there. Let's go back to where you're talking about the seeing the pictures in the magazines.
Yeah, you'd have to go and trawl around and buy any magazine that had a feature on Doctor Who in,
Hmm.
and I had these massive stacks of magazines of mostly sci-fi related stuff, either
You
Doctor
too.
Who magazine or Starlog, and
Starlog.
stuff.
That's right. I forgot about
Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
Fantasy Empire, that was another one.
Hadn't heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh,
I had to make myself this stapled together Bible of references when I
mhm.
was in the VHS covers because they would never really tell me far in advance which ones were coming out next. And to be able to find the references that you remembered up in here, um, and get access to them, you'd have to sit there and just continually flick through these magazines and books page by page. So
Mhm.
I had to compile this little reference Bible. It's like hand typed on a word processor, for God's sake. And
Yep.
in that, I listed whether or not it was a good portrait reference, whether it was front on, side on, um, what other each story had many listings, and so I'd go back to this Bible, and then I could trawl through my collection and pull out the relevant ones instantly, rather than have to spend hours desperately searching for references. So,
Okay. Now
days
the
type
the
something in, prompt, there you go.
yeah. Now the with that particular cover with Doctor Who magazine with the white Daleks.
Mm.
Did you submit a cover design to Doctor Who magazine? As in, did you draw something and then mail
Yeah,
it to
I
them? And
sketched. Yeah, I sketched it out on an A3 pad, I think it was.
an A3 pad.
Pad, yeah. A3 is kind of.
Yeah, some people have recently explained to me what A3
It's
means because we
A
don't use that
A3
term here,
is
as far as
this.
I know.
It's like a
Yeah.
magazine opened up. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so that's what I did with that, and
Okay.
yeah, it was on a hard board, so it was something that I'd not usually used before, and that I think it was about the last time I did, because it was so inflexible, you couldn't get it down onto a scanner very easily.
Okay. Um, Now you had you had done a book cover for Virgin in the Missing Adventures series for the story Invasion of the Cat People by Gary Russell. And I was looking at that cover last night when I was having a great time going through and looking at your works. And that cover with Virgin seems to be it's a different layout
Mm.
than normal, where the art is in cells.
Mhm.
And the portrayal of Patrick Troughton in that again is astoundingly accurate. If somebody
Oh,
looks at that, it almost looks like a photograph at first. And
mm.
um, do you recall working on that one in that different cell format? And why are you
Yeah.
so good at being able to draw Patrick Troughton? That's 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 what I want to know.
Oh well.
Is Patrick Troughton your doctor by any chance?
Well, I love Pat very much. That was one of the other reasons why I did the Two Doctors as my first VHS cover. Apart
Mhm.
from the wonderful Colin Baker, I owed so much to for doing that reference for me.
Mhm.
One of his fantastic stories, but with Patrick Troughton as well, and Jacqueline Pierce from Blake Seven as Chicini in the bottom centre, and then two Sontarans. And do you remember what I said about Sontarans with
Right.
Link
Yeah. Yeah.
and then with Field Major Star? I absolutely adored them. So I chose the Two Doctors as my first. And but yeah, the Invasion of the Cat People thing. God bless Gary Russell again. He, as an editor at Doctor Who magazine, he gave me quite a lot of work. And he went over to work at Virgin for a while with the book range, and he decided for his first missing adventure, he would like very much if I would do the cover art for it. And I was like, yeah, fantastic,
Mhm.
because I'd come up against kind of a brick wall again at Virgin for using them. I think this was somebody putting their foot down and going, no, we don't want him to do any covers. And I kind of had to be content with things like, as you know, the decalogues, because they wouldn't give me the
Okay.
message to do.
Uh,
Um, and then Gary insisted I do this cover for them, and they kind of agreed. Uh,
Okay. I
um,
I I don't want to interrupt you here because this is a really good story. But who and why? Who had the power, authorization, or ignorance to be saying that we don't want this guy doing covers? Why?
I don't want to say who it was because it's not
Okay. Okay,
really
that's fine.
nice,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
nice
ask
thing to
something.
do. No,
Yeah.
that's okay, and I don't want to upset anyone either. Um,
Okay.
and I know how difficult it can be in this business, you know. And yeah,
It's
so
not always fair. Is that a
yeah,
good summary that it's not always fair? Okay.
yeah, very much
All
so.
right. So the I want to get to the things behind you, especially the decalogues. I'm so glad
Mm,
that you have those out on display, because that's not something that I would have been aware of, and it's not something
mm,
I would have asked you about. But now I know because of
mm,
when we chatted before we started the interview. So we're going to get to those, but I've got just a couple of more questions here.
mm.
Um,
Oh, can I just jump back quickly and say the Patrick Troughton
oh
on
yes, sir. I'm sorry. I almost didn't even let you finish that.
that's
That
okay. I
that
did
this
go
is
on a
this
bit.
is not
Sorry.
a professional production, as you can see.
The portrait there was from Fury from the Deep, the reference photo, and I only had it in black and white. So I had to color up Patrick from just general experience to get the skin tones and check the eye colorization, that kind of thing, because you can't tell in the black and white photo. He also
Mhm.
had a bobble hat on, so I had to remove the bobble hat and give him his normal haircut for the cover. And then also, Gary wanted Ben and Polly in the layout, which was a narrow column on the left hand side. So it was quite a little bit of offsetting to do one slightly above the other to make them both fit in this column, which was their reason for their layout. They wanted to be different. And so they keep the Doctor and companion on the left side of the cover, and then the right side would have the box with whatever was going on in that story. So in this case, it was the cat people that were upright cats that were sort of human height or taller in red leather tight jumpsuits with big
Right.
space rifles. And I designed this shuttlecraft for them as well, which was in the book described as being such a high polished chrome that it would reflect all its surroundings, so like a cloaking
I
device.
remember that. Yeah, I remember
And
that.
so in the Australian outback, so I kind of reflected the bright blues of the sky and then the red earth below. And
Yeah.
to design an upright cat in a tight jumpsuit was a weird concept. And then also the fact that they had to have weapons. Well, how the heck were they going to hold them? Because cats don't have opposable thumbs. So I had to sort of think laterally and come up with the layout for the controls for the rifle and the strap and all this sort of stuff for why they'd be able to use them. So that's when did my ramble over that over. Although two of the cats are Gary's, and one of them is the cat Michelle and I got when we got married. It was Albert. He's the black one with the white beard. He's just behind Aisha, I think was the main cat on the cover. He was the tortie.
Okay. Yeah,
So bizarre memory. Sorry.
people that haven't seen that cover, they really, really need to go look at it. That's
It might just
it's
figure in the
beautiful.
book, mate.
Yeah, you talk about, I think a lot of people that love Doctor Who get into it for the escapism because they want to go somewhere else, and that just the cover of that book will take you somewhere else, thanks to your work. So the
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
yeah, I'm not the only one, I'm sure of that. In fact, the funny thing is that almost all people that love Doctor Who that have been raised on or live on the internet these days, they've all seen that cover. And they, whether they may not realize it or not, they've seen it. And when they go back and look at it after they see or hear us talking about it, they're going to realize that, oh yeah, okay, there it is right there. I know that. So the real elephant on the living room couch or the sofa, if you wish, would be all of your BBC videos covers. And I'm presuming that most of them, if not all, are probably featured in your new book, Timeslides.
Yep, you totally right there. All of them are in Timeslides.
Okay.
Luckily, enough room. Also, there were three included that were never actually released or saw the light of day.
Three
Uh,
of them that
Schedule changes and things like that. So they were stories that were commissioned that didn't actually be released until after I'd gone. One of them came out with a photo cover with part of my painting melded into it, which was the Happiness Patrol. They took my Candyman from my design and popped it in there. I guess I did him quite well. I don't know.
Okay,
And
now you're making me. When is the Postal Service going to be here? Darn it! I want to see that. I want to see that.
there was one for Time Flight as well that I did.
Mhm.
I got to indulge my love of aircraft by putting a Concorde on the cover in nice detail.
Yes. Yes.
And
That was you too. That was you
yeah.
also. Yeah.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
And also there was Revelation of the Daleks that I did. And that was fairly early on, I think, in my time at the BBC, that I was asked to do that. But then that was dropped from the schedules, I think, because of clearance of all the music that was used in it.
Okay.
You have to come to agreement with the artists and record labels
Yeah.
of the things that the DJ featured. And so that never saw the light of day. So there's 3 in there that were painted at the time and deserve to be included. So they're in
But
time.
now people can enjoy them in your book. And
Yeah,
I'm
hopefully.
gonna well, I'm gonna make a prediction about your book. First of all, the it's a limited production. Candy Jar has on their website that it's not commercially available. And then right underneath where it says it's not commercially available, you can buy it. So for now. And I think that it may be a short run. You probably know how many were printed, but and I'm not going to ask you because that may be proprietary, but the I think that book is going to sell out. And there are some Doctor Who books that are very valuable these days that cannot be found for under $100 ever. And I believe that your first printing is going to be sitting at around $180 by Christmas of 2023. That's my prediction. And I think that it has a place on anyone's bookshelf, and I think people better go ahead and order it now while it's available. Because I think what we're going to see in the next month or two, probably before this Christmas, is red text underneath that buy box that says sold out. And then they're probably going to be getting with you on a second printing. So I was telling you earlier, I had a prediction, and I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not saying go buy 100 copies of your book as an investment, but I've actually thought of doing it. So, so I think that people need to go order it now. So, with all
I'm pretty happy with the contents, to be honest. I think the quality of the printing of the artwork plates in it is exceptionally good, because I've scanned most of this.
I'm sorry, your audio dropped out there. You
All right, sorry. Yeah, I think the quality of the art in it is pretty exceptional.
okay?
For quality. I mean, I scanned each one of my own paintings myself and put together as digital files, so they come direct from me and
Okay.
high resolution. And so from looking at the book, it has come out pretty nicely. There's
Yeah.
the private commission that's in there, or one of them anyway. And that was a big canvas about the size of the cheetah on the wall above me. So
Okay.
scan that in on my A4 scanner in about
Okay.
37 sections and glue together in Photoshop. And yeah.
What's the DPI resolution that you used?
Well, I normally scan at least at 300 DPI.
Okay.
If it's an original that I'm reluctantly parting with, I'll go higher.
Okay.
Just sure I've got a fantastic quality copy of it. But
Okay.
nothing I've put in there is below about 300 DPI. Even some of the pieces that I've had to reconstruct, ones that I'd sold years and years ago when the video covers stopped, and that was a big income source that just disappeared. So I did reluctantly sell some covers back then, but I always
Okay.
have taken high
And
quality.
when you wait, I'm sorry, your audio dropped out here.
Sorry,
You there? Okay,
but I'd
so
all.
you were saying that you reluctantly sold some covers, and
Mm.
then you were when that gig dried up, and then you were mentioning the DPI.
Yeah, yeah. So I would always, if I was going to sell an original painting, make sure that I took it down to the copier place that get them to do a scan of it for me,
Okay,
and then I'd keep an A3 copy of each
okay,
one.
okay.
And thank God I did. So I would then scan those in, and sometimes if there were areas that were damaged, I'd have to then take a part of the actual VHS sleeve, scan that at a high resolution, patch it in, match it up, hand paint over a lot of it as well, just to make sure that the quality was good enough for me.
Hmm.
Because there's that silly word again that begins with P, right? In the
Perfection.
butt,
Yes,
or
perfection.
perfectionist.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the bunny.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I would always want to make sure that I kept as good a quality copy as I did, and
Okay.
a good job. Otherwise, the book might never have happened.
Okay.
The other thing that I spent a good month or so doing for the book, last year, year before, because this has been bubbling around for a while. Timeslides.
Yeah, I
I did.
know. I first read about it. Our family owns the website called the Timescales. It's a rating and review site, and it was going to close, and somebody was going to buy it, and then something happened, and it was going to close again, and then and we bought it and all that. So I try to keep up to date with what's going to be coming out. And I remember when the time slides was announced, and I had always been fascinated by that. And I'll tell you what, if you wanted to get your story out in the Doctor Who world, there's no better way than doing it like you have. And I I uh I can't wait. We're going to cherish our hardcover, and it's going to stay on our family bookshelf, and it's going to get passed down. And somehow I'm going to have to figure out how to get you to autograph that. But all right, so one one final question here
Mhm.
on your art, uh because I really appreciate your time today, and I know that there's other things you're going to want to move on to, and this is supposed to be a fun, enjoyable interview, not an inquisition. Okay, so so I don't want to have I don't want to inconvenience you by asking these questions, but if you allowed me
So I've
to,
got to put the thumb screws back in the box.
yeah, yeah. If you let me do it, I'd talk to you for about 10 or 12 hours. And I
Okay.
mean, I would not stop.
Well,
But
maybe
okay,
another time, you know.
yes, exactly. Maybe another time. The So how did this massive gig at BBC go down with all these covers? You know, I've heard a little bit here about the ending. Unfortunate. I guess all good things come to an end.
Hmm.
All professionals and artists have dealt with less than positive sides of the industry. But how did this gig originate? I mean, did you just sit down at a typewriter one day and fire off a letter to the BBC, maybe an art sample, pencil, perhaps? And did you tell them that you were their obvious choice? And did you stick a penny black on it and then seal it with red wax and throw it in the mailbox and just wait? or, or was it more complex than that? How
Well,
did that happen?
you've got to get the pressure on the seal right, otherwise it
Mm,
just good. And you don't
yeah.
want air pockets in the wax, you know. That's it.
Yeah, especially if you're a perfectionist, right?
Oh yeah, totally. You know, I mean, some of us guys have our own quills from back in the day, because you forgot to mention quill, mate.
Yeah, I thought everybody in England had a quill pen.
Oh no, I had to take the feather off the end because it kept tickling my nose. But this was
Okay. So
drawing implement.
you saw the interview with Sophie Aldred already, didn't you? All right. You just got me there.
So I brought my quill ready for
Yeah, all
this.
right.
So this is my rotary repeatograph. Sorry, I'm shaking a bit. And there's a very, very fine metal nib on there. If I
Hmm.
try to shake, I shake more. But there you go. You can just see the nib against
Yeah.
the light of my top there. And
Yep.
this is what I used to do all the dot illustrations with. I would sit there hunched over on my bed in my hometown with an art pad on my lap, dotting away with this baby.
Hmm.
And it would take hours and hours and hours, but in the end, you'd hopefully end up with a lovely piece of artwork. And so I thought you might like to see,
Yeah.
Steve.
I didn't expect you to actually show me. And I didn't
Oh,
realize that you've already watched my interview with Sophie Aldred already. I sent that to you last night as a sneak preview and you already saw it. So the quill pen, the typewriter, you're
it's
in the
called doing your homework, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, you're in the in crowd now.
And this bunny is my rotary airbrush
Yeah.
that I use to paint all the VHS covers with.
Wow.
This is the beastie that sprayed out all that paint for me way back in the 90s. And
Okay,
it
so
works. I've dropped it a few times, unfortunately. So it's almost impossible, like trying to find a rocking horse poop to get new parts for it these days.
yeah.
But
So
yeah,
history was made with that tool right there.
yeah. So I
Wow.
might like to see that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
But
awesome.
there's not too many things that I can show that, apart from the
Well,
obvious.
yeah. Let's cover those things. Okay, so we have the Dalek there. I see the nth Doctor. Did you
Mhm.
do the cover on that too?
Yep.
Well, go figure.
And that was the piece that I decided to use for Timeslides. Um,
Okay.
I spent ages and ages trying to think what the heck to call this book. And for a while, I was thinking I was going to call it Icebergs. And it was a bit random, even for most people, but it's a bit of a Doctor Who link. And it's from Peter Davison's speech at the Eye of Orion in the Five Doctors, when he gets his twinges of cosmic angst, when his other selves are being ripped from their adventures by the time scoop. And said it's like great chunks of my past melting away like floating icebergs.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay. Now I recall that. Yep.
And that essentially is how I've felt about MS with my artwork. It's that slow, inevitable drifting away of your abilities, your dexterity, your talent, as this thing whittles away at you.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe that's a little bit too heavy to
Yeah.
title of a book on. So
Right.
instead, I went for the Red Dwarf option because there's a nice, funny episode of that called Timeslides. And it sums up in a word what the contents of the book is. It's visual slides of my artwork from way back in time. And I thought that kind of sums it up pretty
Okay.
well.
Okay. I just got it. I just got it. And I cannot believe that I didn't quite pick up on that yet. I
Uh,
just now got that.
because
Okay.
sorry, you asked about the Red Dwarf connection earlier, and
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I was wondering about
massive thanks to John Freeman, who tipped me off when the dark days were coming. That this other
okay,
company,
I'm sorry, but John Freeman again was who or is who?
uh, he was my main editor at Doctor Who magazine in the early days.
Okay. Okay.
And he runs a site called Down the Tubes, where he'll review stuff, and he's heavily into comics and is always looking for talent and amazing things. And he was really generous in helping me out. And he's the guy that gave me my break at Doctor Who magazine.
Okay,
So
so John Freeman, and he runs a website called Down the Tubes. Okay,
that's
I think I've probably seen it, but now I'm going to go back and look. And for people that are watching this interview on YouTube, scroll down, and we're going to put a link to that right down here so you can jump to it.
But yeah, he's a lovely fella. So I then went to see the editor at Fleetway's Red Dwarfs magazine. To the word "smeg" from Red Dwarf, which is used as a swear word, and tie that with magazine. So it was the Smegazine, and I did many covers for them over about 2.5 years until it eventually folded. And it was in that time that I did a convention, and Danny John Jules, who plays the cat, came through the merchandise room where I was sat, and he looked through my portfolio, and he then asked me if I would be willing to do the cover single. So
Okay, I'm sorry. He asked you if you would do the covers.
The cover for his upcoming single "Tongue Tied," which he had, I think it got to about number 14 in the UK charts.
Tongue tie?
Yeah, Tongue Tied. It was
Tongue
a
tied.
track in one of the episodes that the cat performs with the rest of the crew as backing singers. If you remember that, they do a dance routine. Can't remember the name of the episode, sorry. But it's about season 2 or something of Red Dwarf. And yeah, he released it as a chart single, and it did moderately well. So that was my first experience with record work. And then I got to do a few other things for another guy that I met through Doctor Who, Stuart Crouch, because he was doing some of the covers for the DVDs after I moved on, and I used to help him out in the background now and again, touching up photos for him and providing extra detail work digitally on things for the covers he was doing. So even when I wasn't credited and had left Doctor Who, I was still doing box set work with him in the background, still on Doctor Who. So it's been kind of a constant through my career, even when I moved away and went to art agencies and did lots of children's books and things like that, and educational books and puzzles and stuff. That was where I then spent all my wilderness years before I came back and worked on Power of the Daleks. So,
Okay. Interesting. I was wanting to talk to you about the wilderness years because anybody that knows what the wilderness years were is a diehard lover of Doctor Who for life, and you'll never shake it. So the if the BBC or Big Finish were to contact you tomorrow and ask you to do some artwork for them, would you do it?
you've been chatting to me for a while now, so I guess your initial hunch is probably the answer that I would
Okay,
go.
I'm sorry. What did you say? The audio dropped out there. Could you repeat that?
Sorry, your initial hunch about me and would probably be right, and some of the other stuff that I've said that I would all back if I could. The trouble is now with my MS, it's getting more and more tricky, and
Okay.
working to deadlines is now no longer really a viable thing.
Okay.
I think I took about 4 months to do my last painting, which I would normally have done in about 2.5 weeks
Right.
before this disease took hold.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did do a Big Finish cover back in the day for a release called Walking to Babylon, which I think was a Kate Orman story. I never listened to it because it was when, say, things were not good with me, and relating back to Doctor Who stuff because it's just too painful.
Right.
Yeah, so I agreed, and I did a cover for them, and
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
that
they
cover. I haven't heard the story either, but I didn't realize
yeah.
that was by you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that was one of mine. So it was a guy that I think was a Time Lord, and he's kind of in Lawrence of Arabia type outfit, and the
yeah,
little yellow round floating droid. And
yeah,
then I was doing that because I still wanted to be involved, but the pay was atrocious. It
yeah,
was really not great money, and might have to not include this bit, but unfortunately, I wouldn't work for Big Finish again because they still pay exactly the same fee, and it's just nothing. I think they're unfortunately taking advantage of people's willingness to want to be involved with Doctor Who and to provide cover artwork for them because they really don't seem to value their artists at all. Uh,
okay,
to, I guess, the writers, which are the most important thing, in the performers, who obviously they need most of the budget to pay these guys, otherwise there would be no product. So I can
right.
see exactly why they're doing it, but for professional work, it's just yeah, no, I wouldn't encourage anyone unless they were just desperate to do Doctor Who artwork.
Yeah, I kind of wish that they had some competition because it doesn't
Mm,
seem right that BBC would issue a license to a small for-profit entity like that and then not
mm,
allow any competition because there's more talent out there.
mm,
And but the um the decalogues,
mm,
the decalogues that you have right there behind you, I see Decalogue 2 and 3. Now,
mm,
right there are not Big Finish, and they are not BBC, and they're not Penguin, and they're not Virgin, but it is real canon Doctor Who.
mm.
And those right there are some that I remember because I believe that every story in those anthologies is just over the top excellent. And did you do the covers for those also? My God, Colin,
Yeah.
where have you not been in Doctor Who? You did the Decalogue covers,
Mm,
and here
yeah.
I am talking to you.
Mm, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Sorry about that. Hate to take up your time. Um,
No, no. I've got the whole day available.
uh,
So you did the
yeah.
Decalogue covers too.
Yeah. I was asked if I would consider doing them. Um, I missed the first one, the TARDIS console with the hat stand and the scarf hat on it.
Right.
That one had already been produced, but I then did Decalogues 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until I think they finished.
Okay,
And
so going on to when it was actually not uh licensed Doctor Who anymore. I
mm,
think that's the right way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, probably. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a great shame. I've not really read them. My excuse for this is the fact that as an artist, you're using your eyes all day, and especially these days, staring at a computer monitor screen all day. One of the
Yeah.
last things you want to do is to relax and read a book because your eyes just want to go, no, I've had enough. Yeah. So I've rarely read them. It's usually a case of you just are given a synopsis of the contents of the book, usually by the author, of what idea they would like on the cover. So you then have to try and creep into their head when they're not looking, have a rummage about and pull out something that sort of shows and depicts their ideas. And
Mhm.
that was the thing with the Decalogues. I mean, my wife actually is on one of them. I think it's Decalogue Wonders, I think it's called. And I always thought of it as River of Stars in my head. I think that might have been one of the stories in the book. And it had to be a Native American Indian woman in a canoe in this ethereal starfield background. And so, bless her, I asked my wife to kneel on the floor, pretend she was in a canoe with a section of vacuum cleaner as the
Okay. Now,
so I could get the pose.
okay, you know what? you just brought something up here that I need to go back to, and I want to ask you, and I'm so glad that you just mentioned that. Let's see here. Going back to the synopsis of Timeslides, it said that let's see. It how's your wife mentioned? I can't find that piece of paper right now, but how is she mentioned? You just mentioned her.
She's basically my inspiration.
Hmm.
Uh, I've always sort of loved, say, I think I mentioned it, the Sinbad movies and stuff like that. And one evening I was in this bar in Norwich, and I'd had a few. And I saw this beautiful girl come in and sit. And her friend, kind of female friend, went off to see her boyfriend and abandoned her and left her at this table. And I was like sitting there looking at her thinking, wow, she's amazing. And she got up to leave after a while. And I hooked the toes of my feet underneath the far end of the table that I was sitting at. And as she came past, I leant out from sitting position to horizontal. And so there's a seat here if you want to chat, if you're bored, you're going to leave. And bless her, she took pity, came and sat down, and I got talking to her, and she was wonderful. She'd everything I'd ever sort of admired and wanted in a partner, and she is beautiful, caring, intelligent, amazing. Um, and say it was her 40th birthday idea, the Cheetah Conservation Project, and that's why we went out there. And she would always sort of know my love of the natural world, and try and envisage things that we could do that I could indulge that. So working on that project was amazing. We went to Costa Rica as well, and we were in the rainforest there with being woken up by howler monkeys and marmosets running all over the place. It was quite amazing. And she's just incredible. And she gets some big ups in the book because she deserves it, and she's
Okay.
one that's grounded me throughout my life since meeting her. And yeah, I'd be lost, stroke nothing without her. So yeah, she'd be great.
Yeah. The I don't even know if I should tell you this because it might choke me up to even try to. Before we started interviewing, I told you about my friend Frank that
Mm-hmm.
had MS, but it did not ultimately take him out. Do you want to know what he died from?
Mm-hmm.
A broken heart.
Oh no.
He his wife died of COPD
Mm.
uh earlier that day. So that's you talking about your wife just reminded me of that, and it kind of links a little bit. So I just thought I would let you know that I've never told anybody about that before.
Um,
But
thank you.
his son, when he called me, he said, "Hey, my mom and dad are both dead," and I'm like, "What?" I mean, I thought he was joking at first because they were just in their 60s, and he goes, "But you know what? The disease didn't get dad."
Mm.
So, it's unfortunate that Linda used to smoke so much, and that she got COPD. But that's MS didn't beat Frank. A broken heart did because of his wife Linda, and his love for her. And I see what you just said. So, um, let's uh, let's shift gears here, and then
Okay.
we'll wind it down and close up.
Mm-hmm.
Chris uh apparently was a mentor. Let's finish up with your feelings on Chris. And can you pronounce his last name because I can't?
I think I've heard from Michelle, the font of all my wisdom for things like this.
Mhm.
Uh, his wife Tasha explained. I think it's Achilleos, I believe is how
Achilleos.
Achilleos. I
Chris
think,
Achilleos.
yeah, Christos.
Okay. Yeah.
Greek Cypriot, um, moved to this country as a child with his mother. Couldn't really speak English when he got here. Had a great love of westerns and action adventure stuff.
Okay,
Uh,
wait a second. He couldn't speak English when he got here. What?
uh,
So where was Chris from? Or
Cyprus.
Cyprus?
Yeah,
And they don't
yeah.
speak English in Cyprus?
Well, they do, but obviously they're Greek Cypriots, so their main language is Greek, and they learn English to help accommodate the tourists. But he left there as a very small child. I think he was only about 9 or something like that when he came to the UK.
Right.
And yeah, so he was, say, incredibly talented and a bit of a visionary, and had such an amazing career in the 80s. And that was what I was aiming for when I went to be an artist and an illustrator. I wanted to be sort of renowned cover artist and record and work on film and all this kind of stuff, which he did. And he was so inspirational for me with his artwork. And I would just ape that stuff and try and do my own versions of things. And his his conceptual ability, the way he would put pieces together, was just jaw dropping. And he made such a lasting effect on me professionally that I'd always admired, loved his work, his abilities, and the fact that he liked my work as well was incredible. And yeah, it was just such a tragedy that he passed away when he did, because I was
Yeah.
just to know my main inspiration in my life, and yeah, it was so sad. And it was
Well,
towards the tail end of the pandemic, and because I'd got to meet him once, so that was amazing. And then we ended up watching the funeral via live stream, if you can believe.
mhm.
Um, and we were able to sit and watch the service, which was incredibly moving. So no, I mean he's my inspiration artistically. There are other greats as well, people like Boris Vallejo. His artwork is sublime. The way he captures skin tone and form is incredible. And I would just sit and study their artworks and use them as Bibles to learn how to do things. Because I never went to art school. I had an interview and I wasn't allowed in. So I had to be incredibly persistent, and stubborn and pig-headed and a pain in the butt to people in the art world that might run or edit magazines and constantly badger them. So yeah,
And how do you say his name again?
Christos Achilleos.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The gentleman you were just speaking of. Uh
Boris Vallejo.
yes, Boris Vallejo.
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
that's how it's pronounced as well. They all seem to have
Okay.
crazy names, these people. He was
Well,
to a Doris as well, so it was Boris and Doris Vallejo.
okay. Well, you know what? The nice thing about this is, um, your name belongs on that short list because I
Oh,
think
thank
that you achieved just as much success as Chris, and your name is the easiest to pronounce.
you. Don't know my middle name yet.
Oh, okay. You know,
Not telling.
the let's say that somebody anywhere, young or old, that might find this interview in the future. Because I think it'll probably still be out there somewhere 50, maybe 100 years from now. I don't know if anybody will be interested in it, but I guess we can cross our fingers. Um, but let's say that somebody has dreams or goals of being as achieved as you. You know, someone wants to become involved in art. They want to get paid. They want to have a career in doing something that they love.
If you want to get
Um,
paid, don't get into art.
don't get into it. Okay, so what is your best advice that you could give them looking to you?
You poor wretched soul, why are you going to do this to yourself? Uh,
No.
no, I would say always be open-minded enough and be willing to learn how to do things. I mean, back when the VHS cover job stopped, a friend of mine lent me a computer. It was an old compact CRT monitor desktop, and he put Photoshop on there for me. And that's how I learned to paint. He showed me the very basics. He drew some glasses on a duck, on a photo of a duck, and went, "This is how you draw on stuff." And I learned then that I could do a rough sketch on it and then work that up on another layer and then another layer and another layer. And that's how I would build my digital artwork. It was kind of, I liken it to Walt Disney with the animation cells of those amazing old vintage Walt Disney movies where you'd have characters moving behind things because they were on separate layers. And that's something I never really thought I'd get the chance to do because computer science only came into our school the year after I was there, so I never got to try it. And it wasn't until, say, the late 80s that I, well, actually, no, it was the mid 90s that I got to first try a computer. And now I can paint on them as well
Okay.
as can, or even better now than I can manually because my ability is disappearing.
Right. Right.
That's how I painted the cover for Timeslides because it was that basic original cover that's behind me. And I took that scan of the artwork. I replaced all the TARDISes in the film cells with elements from my VHS covers. I then
Okay.
extended the
Oh,
artwork out width-wise, top-wise, to make it fit a big book size because it's just a tiny little thing, and the original is only about A4. It's not very big at all. Of
okay.
the Nth Doctor. So yeah, there was a lot of fiddling about, and then I realised when we were coming to near the print run that all the creatures I'd put in the film cells were from commissions that weren't in the book. So I
Mm.
then had to replace them all with creatures and monsters that were featured in the book because
So I'm sorry, you replaced them all with what?
with the creatures from the VHSs that
Ah,
are. So
right.
there's misrepresentation of the content.
Okay.
Maybe some of the doctors in the logo at the top.
Okay. Okay. Colin, I consider it a real honor to have been able to speak with you today. And it's something I'll never forget. You know, it's one of those little lifetime treasures right there. And I really appreciate you making the time and making yourself available and letting me ask you this barrage of questions. And what I want to say to people that are watching this video or listening to it, however you consume it in the future, um, why don't you do two things? Thank Colin for his time today in giving back to Doctor Who, and just go order time slides. And let's all order so many of these books that we make Candy Jar sell out like almost instantly or at least before Christmas. And let's reward Colin and ourselves at the same time. Um, However, it's my understanding that charity is large in the UK or England,
Mhm.
much larger than it is here in the States. And I don't think that a day could go by without a Doctor Who lover, uh, purist, aficionado, not hearing about charity in the UK. There's a lot of charity with anthologies and what have you. And we here in the States could learn a lot from the British if we would pay more attention in regards to charities. And I think that it might be prudent if somebody has a little bit of extra expendable cash laying around, that they may want to consider go donating to multiple sclerosis, uh, because I think that humanity, I hope and pray that humanity can destroy that. I want to see MS gone. Uh, so go order his book, possibly make a charitable donation. Thank Colin for his time. And Colin, I'm gonna spend a little bit of time with you and away from you later today because I'm gonna go watch the Mexican Grand Prix qualifications. Uh, you
Yeah.
like car racing, don't you? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just a
When
little
yeah,
bit.
yeah. When I was trying to figure out a time to talk to you today, best for you. Um, your most important requirement was that we would be finished up before the Grand Prix qualifications down in Mexico. So
Mhm.
I guess it's a good guess that you will be watching that tonight.
I think that's a pretty safe bet that
Yeah, okay.
that's what I'm doing tonight, and then again tomorrow night for the actual race. So
Okay, so the qualifications are tonight, and then
yeah,
tomorrow on Sunday is the actual race. Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna need to get my very treasured special woman in my life to show me how to use the television these days and find that. I don't know what channel it's on, if it's even called a channel these days, but I we're gonna tune into that. So um I I think we've covered a lot here. And what I'm wondering is, was there anything that I did not ask you that you would like to answer?
42.
Oh, 42.
Mm,
I agree with you there.
yeah. I still haven't figured out what the question is, but apparently that's the answer. So yeah, go read some Douglas Adams, people.
Colin, thank you so kindly. You are an absolute gem.
No, thank you, man. It's been lovely. It's been great to chat about stuff that I did all that time ago, and it's lovely that it's still relevant in some ways today, and it's resurfacing. So I just hope anybody that does buy it enjoys Timeslides and can cope with my babblings, furious rubbish that comes out of my mouth, but a lot of which is in the book as well. So hopefully there'll be some things to entertain in there and to make you marvel. But the other footnote piece was about a bit you mentioned at the start was about me making a promise to
Yes, that right there.
yeah. Years ago, when I was still working on the Doctor Who magazine, they had a 10th anniversary party, and it was at a place in London called the Cafe München, and it was in a little bar upstairs. And I was up there with my editor at the time, and I think Sylvester McCoy was there, and Sophie, and
Oh,
my
Sophie Aldred and Sylvester McCoy were there?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was while he was the Doctor, and the show
Oh,
was still on air, and
yeah.
Elizabeth Sladen was there. Now,
Oh no, seriously.
yeah, I'm of an age where I kind of grew up with Pertwee, but my main Doctor that I even got to meet once, Tom Baker. Um, he
Oh,
made
you
me,
met Tom Baker.
yeah, he made me feel like you're meeting Car in the Jungle Book. it's like you're being hypnotized by this amazing creature in front of you. Those eyes just pour into you. And Christ knows what I was babbling, because I did the cover of a video cassette for Keith Barnfather at Real Time called Who on Earth is Tom Baker? And
Yeah, I have that.
yeah,
Well,
I
wait a
met him.
second. You did that cover also?
Yeah, and I met that event, and it was incredible. Uh, he made the best impression on me of any doctor that I've ever met. But anyway, back through time to the Cafe Munchen and the 10th anniversary Doctor Who magazine party. And I queued and waited around with Sladen for a chance to say hi and say how much I loved her as Sarah Jane, and that she was my major childhood companion, and obviously kind of a crush, as a young guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You too, huh?
That's what you do, Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And she was absolutely lovely. She was so warm. She was so friendly. And we were chatting away for a while. And she said that her daughter was just starting to watch her and Doctor Who on the releases on the VHSs. And I said, well, I'm doing the covers for those at the moment. And I'll tell you what.
There we go.
The next chance I get with one of your stories, I'll pop your daughter's name on the cover so that when she sees the VHS, and she'll see her name on the cover of one of the stories her mum's in, then it will help reinforce all Doctor Who with her. And bless her, I asked what the little girl's name was. She said, well, at the time she's watching it, but she's not really getting it. But she'll enjoy it more maybe when she's a little older. And so I put her name Sadie on Sarah Jane's character on the Monster of Peladon.
Really?
And I told her that I'd do it. I did it, and there it was for anyone to see. Someone, the artist, defacing his own work by putting someone's name on it. That's shocking.
On the Monster of Peladon.
Yeah. It's
okay. I'm gonna go look for that now. You talk about an Easter egg.
Yeah, it's about on Sarah Jane, just about here on the shoulder, and it says Sadie. And
no kidding.
Obviously saw it, but then it got forgotten about. And I was perusing Twitter, as you do, and I stumbled across a Sadie Miller thread to do with her Big Finish work, because she plays her mum quite often for Big Finish now and does it very well. And I sort of crashed the conversation and said, did you know I put your name on a VHS back in the
90s? There's your conversation starter right there.
Yeah. And she went, you didn't? Oh, yeah. And left the conversation, went to the shelf. Obviously, her mum had been wonderful and kept a lot of stuff that featured her from her days on the show. And Sadie was able to pull the cassette of Monster of Peladon, the double pack that it was, off the shelf. And there she saw her name on the cover all these years later. And that was such a lovely moment for her. And then I met her at the last Doctor Who Appreciation Society, the Capital Convention last year. And I got the biggest hug off her when I met her, and it was absolutely wonderful to meet her. And all these years later to do that. So
I'm so glad that she was willing to go to work for Big Finish, voicing her mother's character. Sarah Jane is the ultimate companion, and it will never be outdone. What that reminds me, I missed a question of you. Do you happen to remember the first episode of Doctor Who that you ever saw on TV, and who is your doctor?
Well, probably my previous conversation has kind of given the big clue to who my doctor is. I mean, I absolutely loved the whimsical nature of Troughton, and loved his wonderful expressionable face. It's fantastic. John Pertwee should really be my Doctor, because the first sort of Doctor Who I actually really remember, apart from little lip verts of some Troughton in my head, like the Cybermen in Invasion in the tunnel. Um, the first bit I remember is really watching Spearhead from Space, John
Okay.
Pertwee's first story. And we lived in this little town, and there was a gentleman's outfitters for clothing. And after that, I got incredibly nervous walking past the shop windows. Mannequins would punch their way out and kill everybody that I
That,
did.
that's great.
That's Doctor Who for you, you
You're
know.
right.
It,
Right.
it makes an impression. Yeah. So that kind of answers both. So yes, Tom Baker is my favorite Doctor. Just thought his range was incredible. Um, his ability with the Big Finish audios is just phenomenal. I mean, bless him, he's about the same age as my dad, and I've seen pictures of Tom recently, and he doesn't look like he's a terribly well man. Unfortunately, he's got very thin and looks
Tom
frail.
Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what's interesting about that is that well, first of all, you just gave me a little bit of deja vu because I was interviewing Sophie Aldred yesterday, and I'm so grateful to her for allowing me that time to talk to her. It was surreal. It was what it was, and she's
Mm.
such a kind and generous person. But she was talking about how she believes that anyone's doctor is pretty much the first one that they saw. So
Mm.
I'm and I think hers is the third Doctor. I don't think that she actually went so far as to say that the third Doctor was hers, but she did
Mm.
mention something where I was able to see a pattern of what other people have told me as well, in addition
Mm.
to her, that your doctor generally tends to be the one that you first saw on
Mm.
TV. So I guess you and I are about the same age. And so I'm with you there on Tom Baker.
Mm.
Now, there was a discussion on that thing that you mentioned earlier, that internet, whatever it is. What did you say? Twitter?
I
Twitter,
think that's the
something,
name. Yeah.
something, yeah, something like that.
Mm.
Some thing with that
Mm.
blue bird that some
Yeah,
crazy,
that must be.
some crazy billionaire just bought it and is probably going to destroy it. But
Is it
that,
his name's Elon Muskrat, isn't it?
yeah, Mr. Muskrat, yeah, and
Yeah.
he is going to destroy it. But anyway, there was a discussion about Tom Baker not being in last Sunday's episode, The Power of the Doctor.
Mm.
And that was trending on Twitter. And for now, while Twitter still exists, and you know, it always scares me to see Tom Baker trending on Twitter, because the way Tom Baker has referred to death in something that I have read of him, he calls it the big sleep. Okay. That's what Tom Baker calls death, is the big sleep. And as we all know, he's getting nearly 90. So who wants to get on Twitter and find out that Tom Baker is trending? Because it could actually be the big sleep. And people were talking about how he had declined appearing in last Sunday's TV episode. And I hope and pray it's not due to his health. But,
Mm.
you know, once you get near 90, I mean, what can you expect? You don't hear of many people living to be 100.
Yeah, not many. Yeah.
You know.
And the weird thing is as well, he's had his tombstone for years.
Oh, he has it already?
Yeah. I mean, when
Wow.
I did the Who on Earth is Tom Baker video cover, I was given a load of photos of stuff around his home and things like that, like his macaws and that he
Okay,
had back.
wait a
They're
second.
probably
You
still alive.
you have been to the personal residence of Tom Baker? Oh, okay.
No.
Oh,
I
no.
I was given some photographs that I think Keith Barnfather had taken back then, and
Okay.
so I had to come up with a cover, but I couldn't use him in Doctor Who costume because it wasn't an official Doctor Who release. So I had
Okay.
sort of in silhouette with his arms out, doing a Who is kind of expression, and then a large portrait of him as he was at the time. But yeah, part of it was the fact that in this priory, I think that he owns and lived in, whether he's still there or not, I don't know. But he bought his own tombstone, and it's engraved already with his date of birth and then a dash waiting to be filled in. With the,
Wow. Wow. Okay. You know what? I just realized the time trials are starting right now down in
oh,
Mexico. And
oh, geez.
yeah, you set that aside, and I am not allowed to be interviewing you while you were watching the Grand Prix. So just want to let you know. I'm just saying. Colin, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I've got
Cool.
some hungry monkeys or monsters upstairs of my own that are probably going to be uh
Yeah,
stalking
I've
around
got one
through
in
the
here as well, man.
okay. Colin, hey,
An
thank
alert
you.
just went on my phone for the Grand Prix. So,
Exactly. Okay, so let's wrap then. And everybody, go out and order time slides from Colin Howard. You won't regret it. This is an absolutely awesome, legendary, historic artist right here, whose name will always, eternally be down in Doctor Who history. So, and the book is available right now. So go get it
get it
when you
while you
can.
can.
Get it while you can.
Oh,
Colin, thanks, man.
thank you, Greg. It's been a delight.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too, man.
Okay. See you around.